Hello, everyone. If I could have your attention, please, we are going to get started. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, my name is Bruce Sellery. I am the president of the Canadian Club of Toronto and your host today. Thank you for joining us both in person and on our live stream. Our club has been presenting and hosting events like this for 123 seasons. That is a very, very, very long time. And these events would simply not be possible without the support of our sponsors. So today I would like to acknowledge the support of Borden Ladner Gervais, BLG. They are represented by Subrata Bhattacharya. Thank you very much for your support of our event. Appreciate it. We are also very happy to have a number of students with us today, including Girls 20 and Civic Action, sponsored by Kirkman Consulting, C.W. Jeffreys Collegiate, sponsored by McKesson Canada, and Royal St. George's College and Upper Canada College, sponsored by Movati Athletic. Round of applause for our sponsor, bringing the kids in. So to you students, Facebook is a social network that your parents use, and they use it to keep in touch with their high school friends and then post about their lives. But the only thing they post are things that will illustrate how amazing their lives are. You could sort of think of it as like if TikTok had a grandparent. That would be kind of what we're talking about here. We hope you will submit some questions on the Q&A cards and really get Garrick on edge. I am very happy to introduce to you today's speaker. Garrick Tiplady is the Managing Director of Facebook and Instagram Canada, which must be a really, really tough job because Facebook isn't like Manulife. Who has a strong opinion about an insurance company? No one. But people have very strong opinions about Facebook. Some people love Facebook, and some people don't love Facebook, often at the very, very, very same time. We love that we can connect with people around the world that otherwise would have been lost to us forever. We don't love the advertising that their algorithm serves up to us sometimes. I've been getting these ads for posture-fixing devices that basically look like a bra, and I think I've got pretty good posture, so I don't know why it's serving me up that stuff. We also don't love that sometimes we spend hours and hours scrolling through memes and jokes and videos, but we do love the birthday notifications. Isn't that the best on your birthday? You hear from all sorts of people. And we love that small businesses can target advertising in an affordable and effective way, which is why Garrick Tiplady is here today. That was a very subtle segue to the topic of the day. Garrick is responsible for leading all of Facebook and Instagram's commercial operations here in Canada. He comes to the role from Vemba Corporation, an enterprise platform for premium video distribution. Garrick also held a number of senior roles at Rogers Communications, and before that, he was a principal at the Boston Consulting Group's technology and communications practice. Garrick will spend a couple of minutes giving you his address, and then he will be joined by Amber Mack, an author, speaker, and radio host focused on innovation and technology. She also heads up her own digital agency with clients like Microsoft, Ford, Google, GE, PayPal, Nintendo, Canada Goose, and Fast Company. Don't forget to send your questions up to the front. Garrick, Amber, I am pleased to pass the Canadian Club of Toronto podium over to you.
Bruce, thank you for the introduction. Thank you to the Canadian Club for hosting me. Thank you to all of you for being here today. And thank you for letting me talk about a few things that I'm actually deeply passionate about. Technology and the internet, small business in Canada. But I wanted to first start with a story. So imagine this. October 29th, 1969 at 10:30 p.m. Pacific time, two computer scientists attempted for the first time to log on to another computer 350 miles away at the Stanford Research Institute over a prototype communications network called ARPANET. Now they got through the first two letters of login, L-O, before the system crashed. And thus, the internet was born, with lo, as in lo and behold. Now, that anniversary was 50 years ago last month, and sadly, it was with little fanfare, because I actually think it's one of the most important dates in the 20th century. Everything that defines our world today can be traced back to that single moment. Every connection made, every message sent, every family united. All the global commerce, on-demand supply chains, disrupted industries. Every one of you in this room today, every post on social media, every hashtag, everything. And now, it wasn't just that those two computers talked to one another. That was actually old news by 1969. But it was how. Now, I'm a bit of a history buff, so if you'll indulge me, this was the height of the Cold War. The US military needed to answer a question. How do you design a communications network that could withstand a nuclear attack? Now, the problem is obvious. In a hierarchical system, if you take out a central node, you take out the network. And so a single well-placed attack could silence the military. So these information scientists, ahead of their times by decades, were trying to build a distributed system where data has no central authority, where information is sent out across a wide network in tiny little bits and then reassembled at the endpoint. Now, as time went on and this system continued to evolve, it shaped how the internet actually formed. This is a system without borders, where people can communicate without gatekeepers. Now, over the last 20 years, we've seen creative energy explode across the internet. People not constrained by the cost of communicating have actually changed the world. New societies and even new industries have found expression in the world made possible by the internet. And for a long time, it felt like the internet and internet companies could do no wrong. But it actually feels lately that after a period of real enthusiasm for everything online, we've moved past this honeymoon stage to this point in time where the value of the internet and the online world is much in doubt and its future in question. Now, I actually think this is normal. Humans are adaptable. We tend to get used to new technologies fairly quickly. We find them exciting, and then just as quickly, we find them boring. For any new tech, no matter how amazing, the awe wears off. And in its place comes a fair deal of apathy, which in turn drives disbelief and even distrust. Now, we've seen this happen again and again throughout history. It happened with new forms of transportation, trains, cars, airplanes, and almost every new form of communication. The telegraph, telephone, movies, radio, television. Each of these things were blamed for the ills and evils of a changing society. Because after the shine wears off, and it always wears off, it takes society some time to figure out what we want from these new technologies. What do we want to throw away? What do we want to keep? Now, social media in particular has taken a lot of heat. And it's not without its reasons. In just the last few years alone, we've seen the internet play host to election interference by havoc-minded hostile actors, terrorist content, misinformation, cyberbullying, and all of this has had an uncertain outcome on everyone's mental health. At Facebook, we know there were times we were too slow to act, but we have a responsibility to ensure the systems we design don't unintentionally have negative outcomes that we haven't anticipated. We focused for years on building tools that help people connect with one another, but we now recognize that that's not enough. We need to make sure those connections are positive. And it's not just enough that we give people a voice. We need to make sure that voice isn't used to harm others. We're on the front lines addressing the critical issues facing the future of the internet. But we can't do it alone because the challenges we face are bigger than Facebook. Take, for example, data privacy, mental health, or elections integrity. Now, for our part, we've aggressively grown the size of our teams working on privacy and security, and if I put that in context, we now have over 30,000 people working to address the issue. On mental health and cyberbullying, which is important to me, Instagram and Facebook now have anti-bullying tools. We use AI to flag harmful comments before they're posted, and we've launched a bullying prevention hub in partnership with the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. And now with the election just a month behind us, I can say that the investments we made helped protect the integrity of our election. While we've been on our back foot in the past, I can now confidently say we're leading the pack, learning from elections around the world, yet maintaining a distinctly Canadian lens. Now, the World Economic Forum calls this moment we're living in the fourth industrial revolution. The first was water and steam, the second electricity, the third IT, and the fourth is a revolution of all three made possible by AI, robotics, 3D printing, nanotech, biotech, and quantum computing. And they make the point, like the Industrial Revolution, we need to be prepared for the impact of technology on society. Technology is a tool. It's a bigger and better hammer. Now, what we choose to build with that hammer is up to us. I know there's probably some skeptics in the room, but we are truly focused on putting people first, building for significance over financial success. And I would actually argue what we're really seeing with the 2.7 billion people who are now connecting across our family of apps is that people's voices are resonating with greater reach than ever before. This has created unprecedented opportunities for small business and for entrepreneurs to drive not only their business, but also their local economies. This is particularly true for businesses right here in Canada. Now, it used to be that big businesses were the only ones to benefit from scale, but now for the first time in history, small business has an opportunity to meaningfully compete with larger brands on a much more level playing field. Now, earlier today, we released a research paper that underscores just how essential accessible digital tools are in helping Canadian entrepreneurs start, scale, and sustainably drive their business. When you consider the sheer size and economic power of Canadian small and medium enterprises, which make up 99% of all businesses in Canada and employ over 90% of all private sector employees, it's not just the entrepreneurs that stand to benefit from access to technology. Small business success ultimately enriches local economies, which in turn strengthens and diversifies Canada's economy. Now, our research revealed, and I find this particularly interesting, is that technology levels the playing field for entrepreneurs who unfairly face systemic barriers when it comes to starting, running, and building their business, most notably women, new Canadians, and young Canadians. But the progress in Canada is promising. Canadian women are starting businesses at a faster rate than any of our counterparts in the G20 countries. New Canadians are contributing to the nation's economy in higher numbers than their proportion of the population. And in just the last 4 years alone, we've seen an 80% increase in the number of under 35-year-olds starting a business. Now, I'm fortunate to have met a number of incredible entrepreneurs who bring voice to this research. Take, for example, Joanna Griffiths, the CEO and founder of Nix, and Nana Botang Asai, the CEO and co-founder of Botan, who is here today. In 2013, Joanna launched Nix, which is an intimates line for women, and has created a brand that helps women embrace often unspoken experiences, tackling topics from fertility to body positivity, pregnancy to mastectomies. Joanna is redefining the intimates category. Today, Nix is a leader in performance intimates apparel. As a D2C company, they use digital tools in almost every aspect of their business. And while many intimates companies have come and gone, Nix has grown steadily, now boasting over 3,800% growth in the last 3 years. Now, similar to Nix, Botan got started with a Kickstarter campaign. Promoted solely on Facebook, they raised over 200% of their original goal, and Botan Eyewear came to life. Now, combining passion with fashion and sustainability, Botan uses reclaimed materials from Ghana to handcraft their eyeglasses in a zero-waste facility. Today, Botan claims that Instagram and Facebook is a key part of their growth. Now, Nana is inspiring the next generation of new Canadian entrepreneurs, yet he remains deeply, deeply proud of his heritage. In fact, a key pillar of their mission is to give back to Ghana's local economies by creating safe, fair-wage manufacturing jobs. Now, I wanted to close with one final thought. As we think about where we are and where we're going, I remain a tech optimist. I'm optimistic that the forces of human creativity are more powerful than our tendency to troll and destroy. I'm optimistic that we're just barely beginning to hear from the billions of people who are now empowered to have a voice and to create small business that can potentially have a global impact. And I'm optimistic that despite all of the challenges we face now and in the future, our human will is enough to get us through. The issues we face are the issues we all face in this room and outside it. They're bigger than any one company or industry or even country. They're not a reason to slow down or halt innovation, but they are a collective call to action to build a better future for everyone. Now, this is important because the impact of businesses like Joanna's and Nana's will extend well beyond their bottom line. This kind of economy where small business, the backbone of local economies, can thrive alongside the big players is, in the end, better for all Canadians. Thank you.
That was wonderful.
Thank you.
First of all, I should say thank you for being here. It's important that you're here and we're having this conversation. Also, Bruce gave you a hard time off the top, so I wanted to do a raise of hands.
Thank you again, Bruce.
For people, the students in the back of the room, how many people are on Facebook, Instagram, use WhatsApp, or use Messenger? Raise your hands nice and high. If we look at the back of the room, almost every student. See, Bruce? Throwing a little shade to start things out. So one of my first questions for you is just to set up Facebook Canada in context so people understand, because there's a misconception, I think, about what the different countries and country heads do. So let's talk about your role in Facebook.
So Facebook in Canada, we have a large-scale presence across the country. And what we typically do is work with both advertisers and agencies as they're looking to leverage our platforms, whether that's for Facebook, Instagram, Messenger, WhatsApp. From a global perspective, I think it's important to also call out that Facebook Canada helps influence product design globally. And one of the other things that I'm really proud about is our AI Institute, our AI research group in Montreal is one of our global hubs for AI globally. And so that's Facebook sort of in general. One of my objectives for Facebook is to make sure we are a positive contributor to both the social as well as the economic fabric of this country. And when I say that, when I think about social issues, we're working with groups to tackle some big problems. So whether it's We Matter with us working on suicide prevention, whether it's our partnership with Media Smarts on digital literacy, or cyberbullying and mental health with Kids Help Phone Line. That is core to what we do on an everyday basis. And then lastly, I'd say I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the work that we're doing with small businesses in this country, as I talked about today. You know, we do get out to the local communities. We want to make sure we help small, medium businesses grow because ultimately that builds community, which ultimately grows our economy.
You mentioned a couple times during your speech that there are many reasons that we can all be skeptical and pessimistic about this future that we're going into, but it seems that you remain an optimist. How so?
So I am an optimist. I truly believe in the power of technology and what it can bring. And that's not to say I don't understand the perspective of people who are skeptical at the moment. As I spoke about, I do think it is natural. We are seeing an arc of technology, and there is skepticism. I also think if you stand back a little bit further, both society and industry, we're just starting to come to terms with what it means to have a truly globally connected world. And there's obviously negative, and we've talked about that, but I do think there's a lot of positive behind it. If you stand back and you look at technology over time, it helps humanity. One of the things I do think it does is helps level the playing field, and that's whether it's access to information, access to support groups, access to medicine, financial system, education, you name it. So there's a case for optimism. Even if I look at Canada, and I spoke about our AI lab in Montreal, one of the pieces that they're working on is how do we make MRIs faster and more accurate through AI? That will save lives. Some of the other things, which again is a case for just pure optimism in my view, and I talk about this all the time, we launched charitable giving tools on Facebook. And to give you a sense of the good in human nature, over $2 billion have been raised for nonprofits. $2 billion raised by people. We have 50 million people who have signed up to give blood. And again, that's just a great connection for how we think around technology and my optimism. And I mean, I'd ask you back. You have been a huge adopter of technology. it's everything that you do is on platforms. Like, do you remain an optimist?
I do. I mean, I think growing up in rural Prince Edward Island and being on a party line and not connected to the mainland will turn anyone into a technology optimist. Because the truth is,
I loved the old party lines.
I mean, not so much for the kids in the back. That means that you can pick up the phone and other people are using the same line who live in different homes. It was not a great time. But nonetheless, I do remain optimistic, and I think you're right in the sense from my perspective as a small business owner, I think these tools are absolutely essential. And if I had one criticism, it would be that because of artificial intelligence and automation, we're seeing this incredible efficiency across platforms like Instagram and Facebook. But at the end of the day, for small business owners, I'm just curious, what about that human in the mix? Can you talk a little bit about, for people who are struggling with the algorithms taking up and doing so much of the work that humans used to do, how do those small business owners in Canada have a pathway to a human to solve problems that may have been created by an algorithm?
Yeah, so this is a hard one, and let me give some context to this. So we have 2.7 billion people who use our platform every month. We have 7 million advertisers, and so as part of that, if we are going to reach that entire community, we do need to do it through self-serve tools, and we do need to do it through automation, and we do need to leverage AI to facilitate that. Based on your question alone, we still have work to do in this area, and we're continuing to invest in all facets of that. One of the things that we do within Facebook Canada is make sure that we get out to local communities, and so we hold events, which we call Boost events, which are bringing together entrepreneurs, small business, and nonprofits, and we bring them together with digital marketing experts where we have days where we talk about education and how do you leverage the platform. The other piece that we do is we have a lot of materials online. So we've got a blueprint training course, which is essentially all of the education you will need to use our platforms. It is free online, and we make that available. And the last thing I would say, which we don't talk about a lot, and I think it's really interesting, is the democratization of the platform itself, making it easier for small business. So if you think around a business, even 10 years ago trying to build a brand, it would be these big flashy television commercials that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to produce. With formats like Stories now, you can create this amazing video that tells your brand story that you can get out to multiple people on the platform. I know you're huge, you use a lot of stories, but that to me is just another way that we can actually continue to make sure that small, medium business can benefit from technology and grow.
So for people in the room or people who are watching right now who, again, are thinking, hey, I could better use these tools, this technology can really help me grow my business, I guess I'm not asking you to share your email address with anyone because that would not be appropriate, but I'm just wondering if you could direct them to a place to go if they are struggling or having issues, again, with how some of the tools are helping them, but perhaps they've hit roadblocks as well. Because that would be the biggest thing I hear from small business owners is, hey, I'm having issues. Yes, I used to, if you had television ads or radio ads, I used to be able to call someone. I think we still need that human touch.
Yeah. So I would point everyone to facebook.com/blueprint, which is the best place to start, and that houses all of our materials. It's the right place to get started.
Okay, great. I just wanted a resource for people to go to because not everyone's in this room, many people watching as well. So when we talk about the media right now, and I'm including both the online conversations that are taking place and the offline conversations, there is a lot of criticism of the technology industry at large. Do you think that's warranted?
I do. So if I look at, I'll even take it from a Facebook lens. I think if you look at the challenges that we have faced over the last 2 years, some of the heat that we have taken is actually not without reason. As I mentioned, there were times that we were too slow to act. I also think there were times where we were caught on our back foot. And so for me, the big learning, and I think it's a learning for Facebook more broadly too, is the systems that we design. We had historically designed with people viewing it from a positive intent. How are people going to positively use the platform? And I think what we've seen is a major shift to say, we have to anticipate how the platform is going to be used for negative purposes. And so we have shifted the entire organization to focus on that. I will say, growing up in Canada, spending a lot of time with Canadian businesses, I have never seen an organization change with so much purpose and focus to address some of the big issues that we are addressing in the world at the moment.
That's not to say we're at the end state. We have a lot that we have to invest in. And so if I stand back and say, okay, where do we go from here? From a Facebook's perspective, we need to continue to invest to tackle some of these major issues. I think as an industry, getting back to your question, we need more open conversation about this. And when I think around the ecosystem, we need more engagement with policymakers. We need sensible regulation. And I think we need an ecosystem that allows leaders to have conversation together, because we've got to tackle this as an industry.
I mean, that's really one of the reasons that I thanked you off the top of this conversation, because the truth is I've used Facebook and Instagram for a long time, but since you've taken over and you're running these platforms in Canada, I have to say there's been a different transparency that has been brought to the table, and I think having these conversations are really, really important. My last conversation or question for you before we get into some of the questions from the audience is really around how people in the room who are leaders, who are trying to further leverage the power of some of these tools and technologies. One of the things I see is that it's hard to even tap into the depth of tools and resources that are available. So what advice do you have? I know we shared that link before that you mentioned, but in general, how can people better capitalize on what you have to offer?
It's a good question. I would say the best thing to do is actually get onto the platforms, test it. You can talk to anyone within our organization. We will make that available. We do also host, as I mentioned, we were actually just out in I'm going to get this wrong, Edmonton and Fort McMurray, thank you, last week hosting these events. So as we host these events, we make it very public. I just encourage you to go out and see those events, because we do bring together industry experts with entrepreneurs and small business. And I think that's just a great forum to engage in that kind of communication.
Yeah, I think like you mentioned in terms of some of the research that you shared in your speech, it's a really fascinating and exciting time for entrepreneurs in this country. And again, like you mentioned, there's so many different ways that they can leverage these different tools and technologies. So we do have some questions from the audience that we want to dive into. The first question is probably unsurprising because it's from a student. Hopefully he's okay with saying his name because he wrote it down. That's our first tip for privacy. If you don't want it said, don't put it on paper. It's Joel, who's 16, who says, what is the hiring criteria for Facebook and Instagram?
That is a great question. My daughter asks me that question all the time. So it's really hard to describe that or to answer that question, only in that, if you think around Facebook, we have so many different functions. Whether it's a sales function or a marketing function or a developer function, I can sort of go across the board. What I would say is, if you're interested, make sure you apply after you come out of university. There are some parts in the world where we do summer intern programs. All of that's available, but I would encourage all of you to apply, to reach out, to ask questions. I'm available all the time, so if you have questions, come and ask.
I have to ask, if you're available, where would they find you? Just hunt you down online? Is that the best thing to do?
So I am everywhere online. I'm on all of the platforms. Drop me a note, direct message, whatever you need to do. I will always get back to you.
All right. Okay, so this is a really great question. This is a question, what do you have to say to advertisers, many of whom are in the room, who may be questioning if they should still advertise on Facebook and Instagram? And this is probably in light of the reality we live in, where we see more and more audiences going towards other platforms. TikTok would be one great example.
Yeah. So here's my view on advertisers and working with us. I fundamentally believe we have an amazing platform for discovery and reaching out to new audiences. That being said, I think we also have to recognize that we've had a trust deficit that has been created in the last 18 months. We have, and that's where we are. And the challenge with trust is we're not going to build that back overnight. That's going to come over time. And honestly, we have to earn the right back from our advertising partners. And so look, the things that we can do to change that, we can continue to invest in the areas that we know we've got challenges. We can continue to roll out new improvements and innovations. And even just last week, we rolled out a new brand safety set of standards that we've made available. And I think most importantly, and you touched on it before, is transparency. We need to show up to the market with much more transparency than we did historically. And whether that means we're going to have harder discussions, we've just got to show up and make sure that we're as transparent as we can be in every aspect of our business.
I think it's also fair to say, this isn't a question coming from the audience, but just from my observation, over the past couple of years, there are often times, too, that Canada plays an interesting role when it comes to testing out new products. I was talking recently about an app that allows you to create your own memes, and in the article from a US publication, I was surprised to read not that it wasn't available in Canada, but that it was only available in Canada. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how the role in Canada has really become a bit more high profile for testing out some of what you're doing.
Yeah, I think Canada is an amazing environment to do product testing or business testing. And we've done that here. Some of our elections integrity tools rolled out in Canada first. Some of our crisis management and crisis response tools rolled out here first. The removal of likes on Instagram that we did purposely for mental health and cyberbullying, we launched here first. And then I can give you dozens of other examples where we're working with some of our bigger advertisers and coming up with unique sort of product configurations to address new audiences. What I think is interesting is Canada is a market. If you talk to most of us within the business community, there is a nimbleness, there is a curiosity, there is an appetite for innovation. And so my view with discussions internally with Facebook is let's leverage that as much as we can, because I just think we've got an amazing audience to do that. Canada is one of the first digital adopters globally. And so if I can ask any of you who can try and bring new innovation to Canada, not from a Facebook perspective, but I think we have to continue to do that as a nation if we're going to continue to succeed.
I have a couple more questions. The first one is probably a little more controversial. I just want to let you know. The second one is going to be nice and easy. So
let's get through the first question.
Let's get started. The first one is, what would a breakup of the big tech companies in the US mean for Canada?
So it's interesting. I actually, I don't believe in breakup of big tech. I really don't. When you look at the services and the innovation that we can deliver, we can do it because of the scale that we have. When we tackle big industry issues like terrorism, online, and privacy and security, we do that because we have the resources available to invest in it. I think breaking up big tech actually limits innovation at a time when I actually think we need more innovation to address some of the major issues. So I would answer the question like that. I understand, there's some discussion around there, but I think as we look at it, we fundamentally believe that maintaining companies in order to drive that innovation agenda is the right thing to do.
So I'm going to ask you the easy question, but I have a follow-up to this other one first. Sorry, it's tricky on stage. But I'm curious in terms of your voice and how you work with Facebook, which is, of course, a massive global company. Because in terms of these conversations that we're having today, how do you bring your voice to the table when meeting with people from Facebook outside of Canada? And is there a pathway for you to do that?
Yeah, I will say Facebook is a global company, and I truly mean that not from a people we serve, but how we operate internally. We are very cohesive internally, and so when there are these big discussions, we have a voice at the table. All of the, just to sort of put in context, all of the country directors, so everyone who's managing countries around the world, we also meet regularly, because I think one of the other things that's important working for a global company is we actually take perspectives from all over the world to inform what we're doing. The last thing we should be doing is look so internally that we're only focused on our own country. And so that's sort of key to how we show up every single day.
So here's your easy question. You can take a deep breath and relax for this one. You have 3 children.
I do.
The question is, what rules do you have for your own kids in terms of screen time and social media?
That is an easy question. So here's my perspective. I do have 3 kids. I've got a 16-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 10-year-old. We have a hard rule in the house. There's no screen time Monday to Friday, which means no TV, no devices, unless it's for school. I will tell you, computers and phones, if it's during the week for school, are downstairs in the kitchen where we can see it, and then we give them regulated time on the weekends.
All right, that's a fair approach. My son wouldn't want to live with you guys.
There was a rumbling in the audience there. Wow.
I know, right? Everyone's uncomfortable. The students in the back are thinking, I don't know if I want to work with this guy anymore. He seems pretty harsh. The last question I have for you is a question that did come in from one of the students as well. And it's asking about diversity at Facebook. So tell us a little bit about diversity and inclusion.
You know what, that's a great question, and I'm really glad it came up. So here's my perspective on diversity from a company perspective and from a Facebook perspective. Again, we serve 2.7 billion people on the earth from all parts of the globe. Our internal employees need to represent the people that we serve, and so I think diversity has to be at the core of everything that we do. We have an internal goal within Facebook within the next 5 years that 50% of the staff are women, people of color, or people from unrepresented or underrepresented groups. And it is just the fabric of how we operate every day. I think diversity not only makes better decision-making statistically, better product development statistically, but I think it makes stronger teams. And so we are a big believer in making sure that we continue to hire for diversity and also include for diversity in everyday life.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And thank you to everybody in the room, and especially all of the students who joined us today. And thank you for being so open and accessible and transparent. And now you're going to hear from lots of people because you let them know you're going to answer them right away. Thank you, Garrick.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Your glasses. You're going to need your glasses, Garrick. I love that the most controversial statement of the day had nothing to do with the Ukraine or fake news. The headline in the newspaper tomorrow is going to be Facebook exec says no screen time during the week. Shocker, shocker. I also bet you've seen some interesting examples of what your kids count as homework, like assignments that they make up because they have to research the business model for TikTok or whatever it is. Amber, thank you for your expert moderation, your warmth, for bringing PEI into the room. That always counts for a lot. And Garrick, I really, really appreciate that you made the time to come. I appreciate your insight. I appreciate your context. I appreciate your optimism. And most of all, I appreciate that you weren't afraid to come here, that you acknowledge the skepticism that people have. And I think as leaders, the more that we do that, the more that we can include what's actually being said instead of just constantly, communicating the message is really helpful for a transparent and honest discourse. So thank you very much for bringing all that. Really appreciate it. Really great. I would also like to thank, once again, our sponsors, BLG. A round of applause for them. Thank you very much for making this happen. And mediaevents.ca, Canada's online event space, and VVC for live streaming today's event. Thank you for finding time for your schedule to be here today, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you very much.